Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 3:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Tristan Leavitt joins us from Empower Oversight. The Biden administration is attempting to ban private gun sales nationwide. We're going to talk about that with Tristan. They're not trying to use the law to do it. They're just trying to be tyrants, as always. Nick Freitas will be with us at 4 o'clock, a delegate from Virginia's 30th District. We'll talk to him about a battle going on in the State House right now involving whether or not prisoners should be released from prison in Virginia after 15 years. What is going on? Democrats pursuing releasing more criminals into the public. And then E.J. Antoni joins us at 5 o'clock, the economist. We'll talk to him about those jobs numbers today. A lot of the business press very excited. But is it cause for celebration? E.J. always has the answers on that. We'll talk to him about that. It's ahead. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We begin today, as we so often do, with breaking news. Fanni Willis is indeed in the midst of an affair right now with a man called Nathan Wade, who's going through a messy divorce. He, in the nick of time, reached a settlement, at least for the moment in his divorce this past week, that prevented him from having to testify in open court about the status of his relationship and his financial arrangements. Apparently the money came through. He was able to stop his wife from further dragging this out in court for now. But Fanni T. Willis, the district attorney prosecuting the Georgia election interference case against former President Donald J. Trump, the New York Times reports today, acknowledged on Friday a personal relationship with a prosecutor she hired to manage the case, but argued that it was not a reason to disqualify her or her office from it. Now, that's the argument she's making. Of course, it is a reason to disqualify her and her office from this case. The admission came almost a month after allegations of an improper, clandestine personal relationship between the two surfaced in a motion from one of Mr. Trump's co-defendants. This is, by the way, this is an all-time great legal filing, isn't it? That they were able to discover this. Wait a second. The prosecutor's in an affair right now with one of her subordinates who she's paying extra over the rest of the subordinates. And then he's turning around and using this money to buy all sorts of fancy benefits for her. Yeah, that seems like a problem. File that to the court. And they did. The motion seeks to disqualify both prosecutors and Ms. Willis's entire office from handling the case. An effort that, if successful, would likely sow chaos for an unprecedented state criminal prosecution of a former president. I think the chaos has already been sown. But the New York Times says, uh-oh, this could introduce some chaos. Quote, while the allegations raised in the various motions are salacious and garnered the media attention they were designed to obtain, this is Ms. Willis's filing, none provided this court with any basis upon which to order the relief they seek. She added that the personal relationship between her and Nathan Wade, quote, has never involved direct or indirect financial benefit to Ms. Willis. Now, based on all of the receipts we've seen, all of the documents we've seen, that's a lie. That's a lie. Because she has gotten all sorts of fancy trips out of this guy after paying him nearly $2 million. Ms. Willis's filings include an affidavit from Mr. Wade asserting that the personal relationship started only after Mr. Wade had been hired. What does that mean, too? Define personal relationship. Is this one of those things where you look at each other and you say, what are we? What are we? Are you my boyfriend? Are you my girlfriend? What does that mean, the personal relationship? They didn't take it to the next level until after he was hired? They had no inkling of a relationship prior to his hiring? Can you be a little bit more specific? Because the reality on the ground is that he was hired without having any necessary qualification to join a case of this stature. He just didn't have it. He had some legal experience, not like this. And yet he's being paid $100 more per hour than the actual top RICO expert in Georgia, who's also a part of this effort to go after Trump and meddle in the election. So the election meddlers are facing some chaos of their own. And today, Fanni Willis now has to finally say what we kind of all knew. Yes, I'm in an affair. I'm both a mistress and a boss to the same man, Fanni Willis admitted today. But she said everything else is on the up and up. Don't you worry. It's funny. So you lied actually about a key point here. You lied about the idea that should you become district attorney, you wouldn't be sleeping with your subordinate. You straight up said that during your campaign. In fact, you said it on multiple occasions. A little reminder for you. Here's Fanni Willis insisting she would never, should she become DA, should the good people of Fulton County, Georgia, decide to elect her as district attorney, she will never sleep with her subordinate.
The district attorney's office in Fulton should be the beacon of the Southeast. It should be the absolute best office between Washington, D.C. and Miami. And right now what you have is an office of dysfunction and corruption, and we deserve better. And I am the right choice to improve it.
Corruption, Ms. Willis, that's a strong word.
Strong.
To level against the office that Paul Howard has run for nearly a quarter century. If he gets reelected, it'll be more than 25 years.
You have a DA sitting there that doesn't have the qualifications and the experience to do the job. What I can guarantee you is with my reputation, with my community ties, I am going to be able to attract the best and the brightest minds to that office. You're sitting with someone today that actually wants to make a difference because they deserve a DA that won't have sex with his employees. Because they deserve a DA that won't put money in their own pocket when it should go to benefit children, because we deserve better.
Wow, that's there's really no space in that statement. It wasn't in any way qualified. Not going to have sex with the subordinate. Not going to pocket any cash. What is she doing? What is she doing? She also said it in another interview as well.
And I certainly will not be choosing people to date that work under me. Let me just say that.
So now what? So that statement right there actually is a 180 turnaround from the one that she just put before the court today. Yeah, I'm in a relationship with this guy, but it didn't start until after he started working for me. Oh, that's funny because...
And I certainly will not be choosing people to date that work under me. Let me just say that. You know, we are at a place in society where things happen.
How can this lady stay on this case? How is it even possible that this lady can stay on this case? The next part, by the way, is funny. It hasn't gotten as much attention as it deserves, but it does suggest to me that she was engaged in the affair at the time that she gave this interview, because she starts making excuses for people who are engaged in affairs.
We are at a place in society where things happen in people's relationships, husband and wife. Sometimes there are outside relationships. I don't think that that's what the community is concerned about, although there might be a moral breaking in that.
Could Trump ask for better enemies than these people? Am I right? I mean, it's amazing what's happening. They are so over their skis stupid as they go after him. And they really are trying to upend the election. The whole plan is one big election meddling scheme. But we have that, and then we get the news today that President Trump's so-called election interference trial has been removed from the public calendar for the federal district court in Washington, D.C. This is the Jack Smith case. It was originally scheduled for March 4th, but the proceedings in the case are all on hold because Trump has filed appeals. And now it's out of the hands of that district judge, Tanya Chutkin, who wants to destroy Trump. She can't do anything. She has to wait for the appeals court. So they've decided to simply yank this off of the calendar. Oh, crap, we can't do anything with it. She's got other trials to deal with in the meantime, which means we may never see this case go to trial. And then one other for you this week. This is all happening this week. A verdict in the New York civil business fraud trial of President Trump. This is the one where Letitia James accused Trump of defrauding banks in order to secure loans from them. Now, let me re-emphasize for the 1,000th time that there's not a single victim in this case. None of the banks have even agreed to allege that they were defrauded by Donald J. Trump. They refused to. Why? Because he paid them back. He borrowed money, and then he made good on his obligation, on his debt. He paid his debt back. And so there's not a single bank who thinks they were defrauded by Trump. They lent him money, he paid it back. That's what you're supposed to do. That's the appropriate way to handle taking a loan from someone. So Trump did that. Letitia James can't find a single party to say Trump did something wrong. So she just alleges it on her own. And now it's in this ridiculous trial in front of this goofball, Judge Engoron. And he can't get his act together to actually bring about a verdict this week. It was supposed to come out Wednesday. It didn't. It's now expected to arrive in what CNBC reported as early to mid-February. Well, we're technically in early February, so maybe it'll come soon. The new timeline for the written decision by Judge Engoron is still a rough estimate, subject to modifications, said a spokesman for the New York State Office of Court Administration, but that's the working plan for now. So they can't even get that decision out. How is this all breaking Trump's way? Isn't this amazing? You start to wonder if there's divine intervention going on here. like, what is this? How could this all be happening at once? It certainly is. And so now Alvin Bragg up in New York, the Manhattan district attorney, the guy who treats illegal foreign nationals who beat cops to a pulp like they're saints. He's just like, yeah, sure, get out of jail. Don't worry. Get back out in public. Flick everybody off. They can't prosecute real crimes in New York. They refuse to. But Alvin Bragg is going after Trump, alleging that he committed campaign finance violations in 2016. Are you hearing this? It's 2024 right now. They say he committed campaign finance violations in 2016. He was paying off Stormy Daniels, meddling in the election. And every legal expert who's looked at this, left and right, has said, man, this case does not really stand a chance. Like, the stupidity of the legal theory that Alvin Bragg is advancing is unbelievable. And now Bragg sees an opening. He sees all these cases either getting delayed or upended, and he's like, well, now's my chance. So he wants to pursue it in March, they're saying. They're saying that he's now aggressively trying to push forward with this. And his case is supposed to be the Julie Swetnick of these cases, the one that's just going to be, okay, that's just ridiculous. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. So, who knows what's going to happen? They're really hoping. Biden himself is banking on, Axios had a report today. Of course, they buried the best part of the story at the very end of the piece. But Axios had a report today, behind the curtain, Trump's conviction scenario. And they run through all of these various trials. They're all going after him. They point to the polling saying that there's voters in some of these swing states who would, if Trump were convicted of a crime, they'd be unwilling to vote for him. It's like 50-50 right now. Or if he were sentenced to prison. Almost every Republican who's surveyed thinks this is ridiculous, that the more that the justice system bears down on Trump, the more they're going to support him. That's obviously been the case during this primary phase. But at the end of the Axios piece today, they kind of let the veil slip here. They say, quote, this is Biden's big bet. The belief inside the White House is that many voters won't vote for a convict, especially if the case is about the storming of the U.S. Capitol and attacks on cops. That would be the Jack Smith case. The one I just told you about is no longer on the calendar here in Washington, D.C. They don't have a date for that now. But that's really the key, isn't it? This is Biden's big bet, Axios says. In other words, all of these cases against Trump, in particular, the ones that are being prosecuted by Biden's DOJ, are actually designed to stop voters from supporting Trump. It's the whole point. Axios just declares it outright at the end of their piece. The belief inside the White House is many voters won't vote for a convict. So that is the game plan. If they can smear Trump as some sort of criminal, he committed a felony, he's a convict, their hope is that they can suppress enough votes to keep Joe Biden in, or whoever their nominee ends up being. But as you know, it's a Democrat power play. But they're so brazen, they brag about it. This is like the news this week that PBS just released a documentary bragging about the affairs of the January 6th committee, and how the public was too stupid to see the evidence and not come to the conclusion that Donald Trump himself is an insurrectionist. So they had to spin it. They had to hire an ABC News executive to present a miniseries on television with stage direction and dramatic music and fake audio on top of security camera footage, to spin the public into believing that Donald Trump had committed some sort of treason against the United States. And they're bragging about it. They're bragging about it again. And so today we get the revelation that, the White House is all on board. They really want to convict Trump. They desperately want to convict him because that's the only way they think they could even have a chance at winning this election. They're telling you what the game is. Let's go to the phones. We've got Tom in Alexandria, line 3. Tom, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
How old they are, and like for instance.
Oh man, Tom, I'm having trouble hearing you, brother. I don't know if you're on some sort of device or it's just our connection, but try again. Go ahead, sir.
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
There. Do you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to say what this comes down to is they know they're not going to convict them in many cases. It's just a harassment campaign. They have endless pots of money because it's taxpayer money.
Right.
And they just bring it up and bring attack after attack after attack with multiple prosecutors. They're just flinging anything against the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah, they want to bog him down. Although
massive abuse of power, it
Yeah.
is a demonstration, but it's a lot more than just anti-Trump because he's pissed off the establishment, not just the Democrats, but the rhinos that are there with him,
Yeah.
the Cheney group, the Elizabeth Cheney and their group.
Yeah.
They're trying to send a message to any other would-be conservative. This is
question.
your future if you cross us. And
So,
this
let me
ought to
just-
really
Let me
worry
jump in
the
on a
American
point you just
people.
made, Tom. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to make this point, though. The idea that he won't necessarily be convicted, I don't know. We'll see, because two of the places that this is happening are Washington, D.C. and New York. That's not a place where you get a jury that's going to really carefully consider the evidence. If it involves a Republican,
I agree.
boom, they're going after this guy. So I think they really are hoping for a conviction prior to the election, although
they are.
they're getting jammed up a bit, aren't
but
they?
they know that most won't. But the point is that it's a lot more. And like I said, I'm no great Trump fan, but I see this for what it is.
Yes.
And the more they push this, the more I support him because I see it for what it is.
And that's why
Massive
Trump is going to
Banana
these.
Republic stuff.
That's why Trump is going to these hearings. So Trump has a choice. Trump doesn't have to be at all these legal hearings. He can let his lawyers handle it. But he's decided, you know what? If you're going to force me to go through this to try and bog me down, I'm going to turn the tables on you. So he goes, he confronts these judges, and then he steps outside of those courtrooms and he releases statements and says, hey, guys like you, Tom, you should see what's going on right now. This is a total atrocity, and I think it's working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
All
let's
right.
hope so. We need a change.
Amen. Amen. I'm right there with you. I pray for it every day. Thank you, Tom. All right. Hold tight. Ahead. Certainly more of your calls. We've got Tristan Leavitt joining us at 3:30, which is, again, just moments away, because we're going to talk to him about Joe Biden's new plan to ban private gun sales in the United States. There is no law involved here. This is just Biden just trampling all over the Constitution again. Tristan Leavitt with some important breaking news this week. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Nick Freitas will join us, delegate from Virginia's 30th District. We'll talk to him about a legislative battle playing out in the state house right now over whether or not to allow prisoners to just get out after 15 years. Oh, that's enough time. You can leave now. Yeah, that's what we need. In the midst of a crime wave, more criminals on the street. E.J. Antoni will be with us at 5 o'clock. We'll talk the economy with him. New economic data out today. The truth from E.J. Antoni on all of it ahead. And you can join us from your phone at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Joe Biden's up to no good again. He's trying to invent laws without actually going through Congress, this time to ban private firearm sales in the United States. Is this something he's even allowed to do? Let's explore it with Tristan Leavitt, president of Empower Oversight, the organization responsible for digging this up and now demanding more answers. Tristan, good to have you with us. Thank you.
Yeah, always good to be with you, Vince.
All right, so what is going on here?
Well, we were approached by sources and understand from multiple sources within ATF that there is a 1,300-page draft document in support of a rule that would ultimately have the effect of banning private sales of firearms. The legal history on this, those that are familiar with it, right? There's long been a ban on a firearms registry, and of course within ATF's laws and regulations, ever since 1986, there's also something that says that ATF doesn't have jurisdiction over those who are selling as a hobby or collectors. And that exception has been one that's come up in the last couple of years. So in 2022, Congress passed a law called the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, and it required that ATF revisit the definition of who is considered engaged in the business of selling firearms. And so regulations were proposed last year, and President Biden was very clear about saying that he wanted to do everything that he could to get to a place where there were background checks required for everything. But within ATF, the information that we're getting is that they are working on something more that would make it, again, virtually impossible to sell firearms just from one individual to another, that a lot of thought and effort has gone into this at the direction of the White House, and that people within ATF, who most people don't have a lot of sympathy for, but a lot of my friends are federal law enforcement agents. My career started working with really brave, courageous ATF agents like John Dodson when we investigated Operation Fast and Furious.
Right.
And, within ATF, people are saying, look, this is a terrible idea, and you're going to put us on the front lines. We're going to have to be the ones going to people's homes and saying, hey, you aren't allowed to have this firearm. You didn't do this in the right way. So there's a lot of concern within the agency that they are going to be forced to be the face of the Biden administration in moving forward with this. And of course,
Yes.
It raises beyond that these huge, if we haven't seen the document itself, right? So we have not seen the 1,300-page document. But if, as described by the whistleblowers, this would be a huge expansion, not just in violation of that law that I cited from 1986, but again, arguably, if it goes that far, violating the Second Amendment, of course, to the Constitution.
Yeah, no question. I mean, there's a lot of basic details here, I think, that are worth going over first. One is that, every so often you hear the left claim that there's something called a gun show loophole. That's a fiction, just to be really clear. If you go to a gun show and you buy a gun from a gun dealer, you are subjected to a background check. There's no such thing as a gun show loophole. But in private transfers between people, so if you sell a gun that you happen to have, but it's not your business, then you don't have to have a background. You don't have to get the government involved in that transaction. It's an American's right to be able to sell a gun to another American, including a family member. But now Biden wants to get the government involved in all of it.
Yeah, and that's the real concerning. And he's been very open about saying that, right? And not just, you go back to, even when Biden was VP, right? Back when Obama said, I've got a phone and a pen, right? Some of the earliest executive actions where he just started striking out his own were in gun control areas. And during the campaign in 2020, Kamala Harris was very clear about saying she wanted to make it impossible for private individuals to sell guns to one another without the government being involved. Yes. And now she's been identified. If you look at the headlines, just a couple of weeks ago, NPR did a piece on how the White House right now is making her the face of its new push on guns. And it explicitly identified that's because it's a campaign year, right? And they believe this will help them to energize their base. So go ahead.
So if Biden were to prevail here, either in this tyrannical way or by force of law, how many criminals would submit their transactions for background checks, do you think?
There's been a lot of research on that, and I think the number is 0.
Okay, just making sure.
No, clearly they're not, right? This is always the problem.
Yeah, right. Like gangbangers transferring guns to one another. They're not going to be like, what we need to do first? We need to make sure this is on the up and up. Let's make sure we file for a background check with the federal government.
Well, and this goes to the heart of, just as you see, the illegal immigrants running roughshod over New York City, right? But some of the biggest challenges right now are these drug cartels also here on the southern border. And again, they clearly, there are massive, enforcement actions that should be happening down there against them from our own military, right? But those that most we are concerned about getting the hands of these guns are not going to be deterred in any way.
Also, you mentioned before that the federal government is precluded from maintaining gun registries. Now, supposedly they're precluded from doing it, although it seems to me that the government is constantly trying to hoover up every piece of data they can on what Americans own what guns, in a very ominous sign. For years, I remember the American Civil Liberties Union used to really oppose very vocally gun registries. It might surprise people to know, given their left-wing advocacy. But if this were to occur and the government were to get involved in every law-abiding citizen's gun transaction, that would mean that the government would have a comprehensive record of every law-abiding citizen's gun ownership. Meanwhile, criminals will continue to operate in darkness.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that prohibition on maintaining a registry, again, is so important. It's been in place for a very long time. It's a very well-respected restriction because, we understand in this country that the government doesn't need to have that information, right? And owning
it's
firearms,
not theirs to have.
Firearms, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, they're just not entitled to it. Also, it goes to the spirit of the Second Amendment, which is the ability to thwart tyranny. And, it's not exactly helpful to give the would-be tyrants a full-blown list of who owns what guns.
Yeah, no question. Exactly.
It's crazy. All right, so what can be done about all of this? Obviously, you've dug this up. It seems you're seeking more answers now.
We absolutely are. I mean, we filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the ATF and Justice Department. We also are going to follow up with committees of Congress. There's been a lot of interest already there on both the House and the Senate side. What we're really looking for is other whistleblowers to come forward, and we are, we believe the public deserves to see this document that's been put together. Obviously, they plan to move forward with it at some point, but before it's finalized, then we're trying to look at it ourselves if possible. But ultimately, I think people can speak up about this and make clear to the ATF that this is something that they oppose.
What are the chances that this is an election year ploy? That the idea is like put this together and release it in the months ahead as a way to whip up votes for Biden?
So I personally think there's a very high chance of that. And I say that because even with the student loan forgiveness, right, even when it was clear that just wasn't going to be upheld by the courts, it benefited the White House, the Biden White House, to move forward with that anyway. And I think you have a similar scenario. If this goes, if this is adopted as a rule by ATF and isn't struck down yet by the time of the November election, then many progressives will be very happy. And if it is struck down by the courts before the election, then many progressives will be saying, boy, now we got to get out to the polls, right? You need to go get different members of Congress who will change this 1986 law. We've got to make sure that we have a Supreme Court that will uphold these sorts of unconstitutional measures. I think this is absolutely a cynical political ploy aimed at the election.
And how much, I know this came out earlier this week, and thank you for sending it along to us too. It's just such an important story. How much coverage have you gotten on this issue? I've seen the conservative and the libertarian press has been covering it with some intensity. What about the rest of the corporate media?
Not so much. There definitely has been some coverage. I've known William Lajeunesse since Operation Fast and Furious, and so Fox News has covered this. But otherwise, it's been pretty quiet. And again, I think it probably will get more attention if we actually are able to get some of the documents that are involved, because I understand right now it is, it's just the allegations of these whistleblowers, and so far we don't have documentation of that yet.
Yeah, well, you'd think the left-wing press would want to run with this just because they'd be tickled to death by it, but even they can detect how tyrannical this is, so they're holding their fire for now, so to speak. I think that's right. Fascinating. All right, Tristan Leavitt, thank you, sir. I am really appreciative of your work on behalf of the country, and this is such an important story. Thank you for sharing it with us today.
Thanks, Vince. Really appreciate it.
Tristan Leavitt over at Empower Oversight, they just keep aggressively going after all this stuff. And a whistleblower approached them and said, hey, we've got thousands of pages of a document of a new rule designed to foreclose on private gun transfers all across the country. That means that you don't have Congress getting involved. There's no law, nothing like that. Not even a constitutional amendment, of course, which is what you would need to do to change the nature of the Second Amendment itself. Nothing, just another bureaucratic rule. Boy, we can't get enough Supreme Court decisions to knock back this bureaucratic state. They really deserve it because we deserve a lot better than this. Crazy. And the ACLU should be out for sure. Of course, they won't be because they're pro-Biden. It's all a Democrat hatchet organization. But I remember years ago when I was doing reporting on Obama pursuing gun registries. Back then, I used to talk to ACLU people, and they'd be like, yeah, no, we're against this. We don't like this, the gun registry stuff, because it's about protecting civil liberties. That's what it's about. It should be. Wild story. Hey, coming up at 4 o'clock, I'm going to talk to Nick Freitas, who's a delegate in Virginia, 30th District there, about this plan to release prisoners in Virginia. They want to spring prisoners after 15 years of serving their sentence. I mean, once you get past 15 years, chances are you've committed a pretty heinous crime. There's quite a few of those. They're even considering releasing just the worst possible criminals back into the public. What? Why? What now? If you looked around and you said everything's so peaceful right now that we could probably use a few more criminals to make things interesting, what are you possibly thinking of here? For more on this, Garrett wants to weigh in from Fredericksburg. He's on line one. Garrett, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. I heard you mention that earlier, and I got really excited because just last month, maybe a couple weeks ago, I have a relative who works in the prison system, and he called me up. I'm a contractor. I do a lot of work for the prisons as well.
Okay.
He called me up and said, I may have to look for another job. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, the word is they're going to be closing a number of the prisons. And I'm like, well, what are they going to do with the prisoners? Are they building a new one somewhere? And he said, no. And I thought, well, okay. And I joked and said, the left must be in charge again. They just want to let out all the criminals. And if they're not consolidating, or building a new prison, they must be letting them out. And then I hear you mention this today on the news, and I'm like, there you go. It's baked in.
So
it's already baked in.
So let me go back to some of the coverage of this from December. This is when this came out, and it's the most curious thing ever. And I am going to ask for more information on this because it's so odd. Like, you'd think that a news outlet would ask a question like, okay, so what happens to the prisoners who are in the prison? That's the most important question you would possibly ask. This is the announcement from the Virginia Department of Corrections. I swear to you, this is the real headline on it, December 15th. Virginia Department of Corrections announces closure of 4 facilities to enhance public safety. Wait a second. You're closing 4 prisons to enhance public safety, they claim. And then they go on. Today, Virginia Department of Corrections Director Chad Dodson announced several actions to enhance public safety and increase operational efficiency within the department's facilities. Augusta Correctional Center, Sussex 2 State Prison, Haynesville Correctional Unit number 17, and Stafford Community Corrections Alternative Program will all be closed effective June 30th of 2024. That's coming up. These decisions were made to enhance employee, inmate, and probationer safety, to address longstanding staffing challenges, and in consideration of significant ongoing maintenance costs. And they say they've already started the process of working with staff to identify job placement opportunities within the agency to ensure the opportunity for continuous employment and career advancement. So, did you say it was your friend who works in the prisons who said I might be out of a job?
It's my brother.
Oh, it's your brother, excuse me. And has he found new work?
No, not yet. He's looking around right now because this is all kind of new. But I know about Augusta. They're one of my customers, and so is Haynesville. I don't do work at the other two. But I don't know what they're going to do. They just built a multi-million-dollar wastewater plant at Augusta. So they close that down. They'll just sell it to the town or something. What a waste of money.
It's amazing. They say it's going to enhance public safety, but I'm reading some of these articles from the time, and not a single one tells us what happens to the prisoners. Not a one. They're just like, oh yeah, it's going to help us. How? Can be a little bit more specific? Maybe there's a bigger plan here. Anyway, we'll ask Nick Freitas about it coming up. There's a lot to talk about. Right. Thank you very much for the call, Gary.
We're the government, and we're here to help.
Yeah, those are scary words, as you know. Thank you, Garrett. I did find in some coverage in Axios about the prisons, the 4 prisons that they're shutting down in Virginia, that the prison population in the Commonwealth is down since before the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, it was 26,000. That was the average daily population in the state's 27 largest prisons. It is now down to under 22,000, so 4,000 fewer. Does that 4 facilities fewer? Well, they're closing 4, so I guess they're either consolidating people or they're springing them free. We will talk again in moments with Nick Freitas about this very phenomenon. But the reason we're talking about it is because this week there was a hearing about this legislation, and you had citizens of Virginia who were only able to participate remotely. They weren't allowed to testify in person. What is this? They were only allowed to testify over the computer. And they were just given a minute. For instance, here's a mother who was testifying about how it would be a bad idea to let prisoners out after 15 years.
My name is Sharonda Hubert, and I'm from Lynchburg, Virginia, and I oppose House Bill 834. This is my 2-year-old son, Simeon. Almost 11 years ago, he died at the abusive hands of his father. He would be 13 years old if he were alive today. It's been an indescribable 11-year battle for me to have some sort of normalcy in my life. As stated before, this is a life sentence. My entire family has been deeply affected by Simeon's death, especially my other children. I've cried for the past 2 days. My anxiety's been through the roof. I can't eat. I can barely sleep at the thought of this vote. Voting in favor of this bill will be a slap in the face of victims' families like mine.
Yeah, she had to sprint because all these families that they were only given the smallest window of time to be able to convey over the internet their dissatisfaction with the House, with the state legislature, even considering springing prisoners after 15 years in the Commonwealth, some of whom have committed some of the most heinous crimes imaginable. Nick Freitas, a delegate in Virginia, joins us coming up just moments away. Also, E.J. Antoni is ahead on the program. We'll talk about the new economic data that's out today and what it really means. And also, Joe Biden does not have a real presidential campaign. They're not interested in doing right by you. They are interested in coming up with a great song for him to walk away from the stage with. And we've got some suggestions for him. Perhaps you do too. It's all ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show.